So I was thinking, a dangerous pastime. I know. You know Renfest was last month, right? Yeah, of course. So we're dressed like that because... Well, because you said that we were gonna read more fantasy this year. And so I thought I might try to get you in the mood. It's fine, we're still at the beginning of the year. It's April, and you've read one. I see your point. You know what might help with that? Our fantasy bingo? Our fantasy bingo. Oh, I don't know, it's time to give in to the hype. Fine, but let me finish this chapter first. Did she just, shh? Okay, move over. Hello, my lovely friend, it's Margaret. Welcome back to the channel. I know this might be shocking news, but today we are going to be talking about our fantasy bingo. Here's the deal. Reddit kind of scares me, so I tend to stay away from that particular platform, but I keep watching people read stuff and put out their TBRs for our fantasy bingo, and the FOMO is getting to me. On top of that, I haven't been reading as much fantasy as I used to, and since that is my first love when it comes to books, I feel that's a problem. I decided that this was going to be my first year participating in our fantasy bingo. I'm going to get into my TBR in a minute for those of you that are here looking for ideas on what you could do on some of those prompts. So first, for those that are like, what the heck is our fantasy bingo? Let's take it to past Margaret. Thank you. We will go back to future me in a minute to talk about which books I'm actually going to be reading for this challenge, but I figured I'd tell you guys a little bit about what the Our Fantasy Bingo Challenge is. This is a yearly challenge that is run out of the Our Fantasy subreddit. It starts on April 1st and then it goes to March 31st of the next year. According to the main post on the challenge, the goal is to get people to step outside of their comfort zones and motivate them to keep up with their yearly reading. There are 3 different modes that you can do this challenge on. There is the regular mode, there is a hard mode where there's an additional added challenge on top of the normal prompt, and then there's what's known as hero mode, which is where you are supposed to review every single book that you read. I don't know that I'm going to be doing hard mode. Maybe if some of the additional prompts appeal to me, I'll go for that. Do think I might do hero mode because I'm trying to get back in the habit of actually reviewing books. There are a couple of rules that I'm going to need to abide by. Number 1, you can only use a book once. The second rule is that you can only use an author once unless they happen to be included. There's like a short story prompt. If they're included in the short story book, you can use them more than once. And then the final rule is that only one book can be a reread. That makes sense since the goal of the challenge is to get people to read new books. So let's take a look at what some of the prompts are. I haven't looked at the bingo board yet, so this is going to be my fresh reaction to what some of these prompts are, and then we'll chat about what I'm going to read for that. Starting with the first row across, we have knights and paladins for the first prompt. One of the protagonists is a paladin or a knight. The hard mode for this one is that the character has an oath or a promise to keep. If I had the time, I feel like I could name like 10 off the top of my head. I'm not getting into recommendations in this video just because I'm trying to keep things short. But if that is something that you are interested in, let me know in the comments. Tell me what you're looking for still. For Knights and Paladins, I'm going to be reading The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is an adult romantasy. We are following a nun who is burdened by prophetic dreams, and she has to seek help from a heretic knight as people from her cloister start going missing. The second is a hidden gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. New releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. Hard mode is published more than 5 years ago. For Hidden Gem, we're going to be going with A Shade of Madness by Thiago Abdallah. This is an adult fantasy and it has a grand total of 132 reviews. It's the second book in the Ashes of Averon series that started with A Touch of Light. In the first book, A Touch of Light, we are introduced to a rich fantasy world that is dealing with an encroaching madness and a church that is intent on hiding that, among other things. Number 3 is published in the 80s. Read a book that was first published anytime between 1980 and 1989. The hard mode is to read one that is written by an author of color. For 80s book, I'm going to be doing a book that was published in 1982, and that is The House of Spirits by Isabel Allende. This is a historical fiction with a touch of magical realism. It's a family saga following 3 generations of Chilean women from World War I to the Pinochet coup. Number 4 is high fashion. Read a book where clothing/fashion or fiber arts are important to the plot. Hard mode for that is the main character makes clothes or fibers. For high fashion, there was only one book that I even considered for this, and that is Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. This is a YA fantasy. It's the second book in the Blood of Stars duology, and it has often been compared to like Mulan meets Project Runway. We follow a seamstress, Maya, as she poses as her brother to enter into a deadly competition. The prize, becoming the Imperial Tailor, will set Maya and her family up for life, but she does have to keep her identity a secret, or she dies. Finally, for the first row, we have Down with the System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. The hard mode is not a governmental system. Considering that this is fantasy, that is diabolical. For Down with the System, I'm going to be reading 5 Broken Blades by Mai Cortland. This is an adult fantasy. It is 5 liars that have been brought together to kill a god king, which we are always here for. The description on Goodreads was very sparse, but the line that captured me was 5 blades, but only 1 crown. Second row across, we have Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. The geometry non-Euclidean. The volume bigger on the inside. The directions merely a suggestion. Hard mode is at least 50% of the book takes place within the impossible place. This prompt was made to specifically pick on my brother, and I'm gonna send it to him when we're done here. For Impossible Places, I did in fact ask my brother what he thought would fit this prompt, and he suggested Discworld. So I am going to be starting with Guards by Terry Pratchett. This is adult fantasy, and all that it says is that there are dragons, and there's like some sort of pocket dimension, and there is a key, but I don't know if they're trying to lock it or unlock it. I'm not sure I'm ready for the amount of commitment that it will take to finish the Discworld series, but that's never stopped me before. Prompt number 7, so second on the second row, is a book in parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. This can include things like acts, parts, days, years, and so on, but it has to be more than just chapter breaks. Hard mode, the book has 4 or more parts. For a book in parts, I'm going to go with Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This man loves a 5-act book with multiple interludes. This is an adult epic fantasy, and it is set in a world of storms that is paying the price for its guardians walking away. We're following multiple main characters, and one of the themes in this is people who are doing things or in specific positions because of family. I don't want to get too much further into that because we get into spoiler territory with this book so quickly. Basically, if you want Lord of the Rings, less traveling, more war, and a lot grittier, this is the series to pick up. Number 8 is Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. And the hard mode is there are multiple pantheons involved. Ooh, okay. For Gods and Pantheons, we are going with a book that BookTube has been raving about, and that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is adult fantasy, and we are following someone who is hiding his true identity at a prestigious academy. He's been sent to this academy because he's supposed to be both solving a murder and finding out secrets to bring down the hierarchy, which is the republic that rules his country or wherever they are. I'm slightly skeptical at the number of goals that we have for this book, but people seem to like it, so I'm gonna give it a chance. Second to last one on row 2 is last in the series. Read the final entry in a series. Hard mode, the series is 4 or more books long. This one was made specifically to torment me. For the last book in this series, I'm going to reference my notes because there is no way that I get this title without reading it out loud, and that is Miss Percy's Definitive Guide to the Restoration of Dragons by Quimby Olson. You guys know how much I love this series. It's a Regency fantasy that's basically like if Charlotte Lucas had never married, that's a spoiler, but if she'd never gotten married, and then you add in dragons. We are following Mildred Percy, and she is a spinster who does not have adventures, and then she inherits a dragon egg from her uncle. The problem with that is that she did not know dragons existed until she is in the vicar's parlor watching one hatch. And the final prompt on round 2 is to read a book that was or is officially a group read on Our Fantasy, and they have the Goodreads shelf and a Google Sheet that has all of the information that you need for that. Hard mode for this is to read and participate in an Our Fantasy book club book or read along during the bingo year. For a previous Our Fantasy book club or read along book, I'm going to keep an eye out and see if anything else catches my eye, but for now we're going to say Forged by Magic by Jenna Wolfhard. This is a previous book club book. It's an adult romantasy between a half-orc and an elf, and our half-orc is currently living in captivity, and she's made a deal with the emperor that's holding her captive that if she goes and looks for this one specific magic, he will set her free. There's a slight hitch when she gets shipwrecked on a secluded island and has to wait for the next imperial ship to pass by. She meets a taciturn blacksmith with a secret that may lead to her having to choose between her freedom and her heart. Moving on to the third row across, we have Parent Protagonist. Read a book where a main character has a child to care for. The child does not have to be biologically related to the character. We like that. And then the hard mode is that the child is also a major character in the story. For our Parent Protagonist, we will be going with Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. It was indie published originally, so there's a really interesting mix of fantasy and science fiction going in this futuristic world based on Japan. We're following a mother and a son. The mother is reckoning with a violent past that she thought she'd left behind her, and then the son is grappling with a friendship that is threatening to upend everything that he knows about his homeland. If you know anything about the history of Japan, you kind of know where we're going here. So the second prompt on the third row is epistolary. The book must prominently feature any of the following: diary or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcripts, etc. Hard mode is the book is told entirely in epistolary format. That was a big format though, like I want to say 10 years ago. I feel like there are entire series of middle grade and YA fantasy novels that are entirely epistolary, like diary entries or letters going back and forth. For an epistolary novel, I had to reach for a horror classic, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I feel like the fact that this is one of the most famous not only vampire novels, but vampires, means I don't need to explain to you what the plot of this is. And I also do not know it because I feel like, again, I have a really good grasp of what this book is going to be about, but I do know that it is an epistolary novel because a lot of the novel is told in letters going back and forth. Number 13 is Their Free Space, which is to read a book published in 2025. No reprints or new editions. Hard Moses, it's also a debut novel, as in it's the author's first published novel. For a 2025 book, I'm going to be reading Cry, Voidbringer by Elaine Ho. This is an adult fantasy. It is the author's first book, and we're dealing with a world where children are being conscripted to fight for an empire, following a woman who was one of those children, and she is now a jaded adult, and an encounter with a child that she ends up accidentally capturing leads her to decide that she is not letting this cycle continue, at least not for this child. Next on row 3 is Author of Color. Read a book written by a person of color. Hard mode is to read a horror novel by an author of color. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, I bet you already know exactly which author I'm gonna pick for this. Pause this and let me know in the comments if you think you know who it is. I am sure you guys knew that the minute I saw the horror prompt for author of color, you knew I was gonna be picking up some Stephen Graham Jones. This is Buffalo Hunter Hunter. This is adult historical horror. The diary of a Lutheran priest from 1912 has been unearthed, and through it we are learning the story of Goodstab, who is a Blackfeet vampire looking for justice. Finally, on row 3, we have small press or self-published. Read a book published by a small press, so not one of the big 5 publishing houses, or Bloomsbury, or that is self-published. And then the hard mode is the book has under 100 ratings on Goodreads or is written by a marginalized author. I do appreciate that they are trying to get people to read marginalized authors. I feel like we could have more of these could be like main prompts rather than being hard mode prompts, just because like a lot of these, like they're very regular prompt to me. Putting them on hard mode implies that they are hard to find books, and they're not. They're there. You just have to you don't have to look hard, but you do have to look. Like you have to step outside of what is on the end caps at Barnes & Noble. For self-pub or indie press, I am going to be reading The Orc and the Innkeeper by Cora Crane. This is an adult fantasy romance, and our human main character is having to team up with her high school enemy in order to help save her late aunt's struggling inn. He is a half-orc, and he is agreeing to this because he needs a fake fiance to help with a business deal. During the 4th row, we have Biopunk. Read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. We love this. We're getting some sort of sci-fi in. Hard mode is there is no electricity-based technology. No, that's mean. Oh, yeah, that's a hard, that is a hard mode prompt. For Biopunk, I'm going to be reading a book that is very hard to explain, but it is Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the 3rd installment in a series of perspectives that are exploring and analyzing this mysterious wilderness that popped up overnight. They're studying it because it is slowly growing, and it also seems to be affecting the minds of the people that go in there. This is a last-ditch attempt by what I assume is going to be a team of scientists as they deal with the collapse of a decades-long initiative to study this place. Second prompt on the 4th row is Elves and or Dwarves. Read a book that features the classical fantasy archetype of elves and or dwarves. They do not have to fit the classic tropes, but they must be either named as elves and or dwarves or be easily identified as such. Hard mode is to have the main character be an elf or a dwarf. For elves or dwarves, I am going to be reading The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. This is adult high fantasy, and we have a priest that has been summoned to shepherd an unconventional flock. Sounds like there's some shady characters here. He's also been tasked with a mysterious mission that there are not a lot of details about, but I do know that the main, antagonist of his society are elves. Next prompt on row 4 is LGBTQIA protagonist. Read a book where a main character is under the LGBTQIA+ umbrella, and then hard mode is the character is marginalized on at least one additional axis. So looking at an intersectional identity. See, I like that one as a hard mode prompt, right? Like it's the initial prompt is LGBT+, and then it's like on top of that, look into intersectionality. For the LGBT+ prompt, I am going to be reading Hamajang Luck by Makana Yamamoto. This is adult science fiction. We're following a reformed thief on parole who gets dragged back into the criminal life by the partner that betrayed them. As these kinds of stories go, the deal is too good to pass up, and this is me adding on, it sounds like whoever they're going against, it sounds personal. Number 4 on row 4 is 5 SFF short stories. Any short story, as long as there are 5 of them. Hard mode, read an entire SFF anthology or collection. For short stories, I went with an anthology because that is so much easier than trying to find 5 individual short stories. I went with Never Whistle at Night. This is an anthology edited by Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst. It is a horror anthology described as a celebration of Indigenous people's survival and imagination, and it has authors such as Rebecca Roanhorse, Sherry Demeline, and Tommy Orange. And then the final prompt on this row is Stranger in a Strange Land. Read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character, or characters if there are a group, must be either visiting or moving in as a minority. Hard mode is the main character is an immigrant or a refugee. For Stranger in a Strange Land, we're picking Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is adult historical fantasy. We're following Robin Swift, an orphan and an immigrant who is brought from Canton to London and set on the path towards the Royal Institute of Translation. He loves what he does there, but when Britain pursues war with China, he is thrown into conflict between his adopted home and his homeland. First on the final row is recycle a bingo square. Use a square from a previous year as long as it does not repeat one on the current card. Hard mode is not very clever of us, but do the hard mode for the original square. You know what? Why do work that you don't have to do, my friend? The prompt that I decided to recycle was from last year's bingo, which was the prompt to read a book that is set in a small town. For that, I'm going to be reading The Whispering Night, which is a YA paranormal fantasy, Gilmore Girls meets supernatural kind of thing we've got going on. We have Monster Hunter in training Winnie Wednesday, who is trying to reverse her family's exile while also trying to convince people that there is a new monster that is haunting the woods they watch. The second one on the final row is Cozy SFF. Cozy is up to your preferences for what you find comforting, but the genre typically features relatable characters, low stakes, minimal conflict, and a happy ending. And then hard mode is an author that is new to you. Most cozy authors are going to be new to me, so that'll be a pretty easy one. For a cozy science fiction fantasy read, I'm going to be reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This is an adult cozy fantasy, and we're following Professor Emily Wilde, who prefers her research to anything that has to do with people. Unfortunately, her current project requires her to make nice with her insufferably handsome rival. Moving on to number 3 on the final row, we have generic title. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in the title. Oh, okay, I see. Blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. Plural is allowed. And then hard mode is the title contains more than one of the listed words or contains at least one word and a color, number, or animal. For the generic title, I went with A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This is adult romantasy. It is Norse inspired. We're following a shield maiden as she is learning how to use her magic, which is supposed to unite her people under the power-hungry king that she's married to. But it's his son that is catching her eye. Second to last prompt on the bingo board is not a book. Do something besides reading a book. Watch a TV show, play a game, learn how to summon a demon. Okay, maybe not the last one. Yeah, maybe not the last one. I feel like we already have enough of those in Washington. Okay, I'm not reading all of that, but basically it's encouraging you to engage in science fiction, fantasy, horror, all of that in another format. For the not a book prompt, I think I'm gonna try Fallout. I've been hearing really good things about this TV show, and I feel that there are certain parts of it that are just applicable to where I am mentally and emotionally right now. I am also down for any recommendations that you might have, so if there is a show or a game that fits this prompt, feel free to leave it in my comments. I would love to hear about it. And then the final one, the final prompt on this bingo board is pirates. Read a book where characters engage in piracy. Hard mode is not a seafaring pirate. That's a fun prompt. For the pirates prompt, I had to go with The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. We have a retired pirate captain who ends up getting the crew back together for one last adventure after a former crewman's daughter goes missing. So that is everything that I am currently planning to read for the 2025 Our Fantasy Bingo, but you guys know me, I am probably going to swap some of these out. I'm definitely not going to get to all of them. I'll pop it right up over here if you want to pause and take any notes for books that you were interested in. If you would like to see how things go for me and you are not already subscribed, you know what to do. And if you are subscribed, feel free to hit that bell icon so that you can be the first to know. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!